Right from the very word go, I have always said that Brexit is about the economy, stupid. And we have seen throughout not only just, again, the initial, shall we say, forays in 2016, but even since then, um, Brexiteers just have not understood the modern world of trade. They do not understand the concepts, for example, of trade gravity, a very observable fact that countries always trade with their most closest partners. We've seen Liz Truss go out and make deals with Australia and New Zealand, which are going to add nothing, literally less than 1%. In the case of the Australian trade deal, it is 0.02%. And even the New Zealand deal is reported not to actually add anything to our trade deal, but actually to take away from it, because that came out as a minus number, shockingly enough. Not only that, we've also seen ridiculous moves for the UK to try and join the US trade deal, which was a trade deal between Canada, the USA, and Mexico. Apparently, the UK wants to insert itself into that somehow. Again, that doesn't make a bit of sense. If we want to, quote, join trade deals or these trade blocks, then we have an amazing one sitting on our doorstep with over 40 years of proven economic benefits. And now we are starting to see, well, just initially, some of the true costs of Brexit. And these are only going to get more and more worse. And if Johnson really has insisted that he wants to, quote unquote, trigger Article 16, which would indeed incite a trade war, which is not going to turn out very well for the UK at all, then good luck. Because there's one thing that the Brexiteers claimed that they would be good for Britain, and of course it would be good for the economy, and yet so far Brexit has not turned out to have a single economic benefit. All our warnings are coming very quickly true about Brexit. And as a lot of people have said before, this is going to turn out like the Iraq War. At one point, public opinion and the polls would have said you can go out and find anyone who was in favor of the Iraq War. Now, you can't find a single person in the street who will be in favor of it. I think that's very, very likely going to be the same thing that happens with Brexit. So let's jump into this article. But before we do that, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page, as well as a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all the people who do support me that way. So on with the article then. This comes from Yahoo Finance with the title of UK Exporters Struggle with Brexit Despite the Global Trade Boom. The trade UK deficit widened to around £2.8 billion in September, from a revised £1.9 billion in August, according to the ONS figures released on Thursday, as exporters struggled to capitalise on a global bump in demand. The Brexit factor weighed on the numbers, as new border checks, supply chain issues such as queues at the ports, and a shortage of HGV drivers have continued. And remember, we are still not implementing full checks at the border. They are still not in place yet. And when they come into place, oh boy, that's going to cause even more problems. The values of goods exports exceeded up to £26.4 billion in September, from £26 billion in August, but this was still very well below 2019's average of £31 billion. Exports were also weak in real terms. The volume of goods exported was 16% below its 2019 average. Brexit is to blame for the ongoing relative weakness of exports. After all, the commodities breakdown show that food and beverage exporters once again were among the worst performing actors, said Gabriel Dickens, the senior UK economist at the Pantheon Macroeconomics. Overall, imports of goods to the UK increased by 2.3 billion, of roughly about 5.9% in September of 2021, driven by the increased exports from non-EU countries. The total of export goods also increased in September of 2021 because of an increase in exports to the EU, while exports to non-EU countries fell. Exports to EU countries were around £800 million higher than exports to non-EU countries in September of 2021. Imports from non-EU countries continue to be higher than from EU countries for the ninth consecutive month. After the gap between the two closed across the summer months, it has now increased to its widest point on the year at around £2.5 billion. The ONS said that the ongoing coronavirus pandemic and the recession is a difficult to try and assess to the extent at which this reflects short-term trade disruption or long-term supply chain adjustments. Looking ahead, we do not expect to see a very sharp revival in exports in the coming months, said Dickens. The new export orders, however, a component of manufacturing and PMI, was very well below 50 in October and below the equivalent index in the Eurozone for the 10th consecutive month. In addition, temporary trade barriers might be imposed by the EU in the coming months if the dispute over Northern Ireland Protocol continues to escalate. Fuel imports have propped up the UK's trade number in the run-up to winter. And according to the data, the largest increase in fuel exports was driven by the rise in the import of crude oil and gas from Norway and crude oil from the USA, following on from the fall in August of 2021. The rise in fuel prices also reflects the increased global demand driven by economic recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic and the global recession, alongside the international supply issues, the ONS said. Increased volume of exports reflects the higher domestic demand compared with the earlier year, combined with the domestic supply and disruptions of a lower production renewable energy than in 2020. So, as you can see so far, this does not look good. This is not looking good at all, economically wise for us. And remember, we're just coming up to like the first proper year of Brexit. Like, remember, 2021 is like officially like the first proper year of Brexit. But, and it's always a big but, first of all, we are not implementing proper checks at our border. Stuff is just going through because we're not checking it. Sorry, we're waving stuff in at the moment because we're not checking it. But if you are going through to Europe, it is having to have checks. So we haven't implemented those checks of stuff coming in because, as we said before, the infrastructure is basically just not there. And in Rishi Sunak's budget, by the way, there was no extra spending to spend on these very crucial import structures. So just as the can has been kicked from again in October when they were meant to be brought in, it has been kicked further down the road yet again. And we have to ask the question of, when we get to this point again, is the can going to be kicked down the road yet again, just to avoid, well, trouble and making it look like old Boris got Brexit done? Isn't he such a good chap? But of course, you know, you've got to listen to the economists on this. There isn't a single economist making a case that Brexit is doing well, that it is going to be a good thing for the economy. And this goes back all the way back to 2016, if not beyond. The Brexiteers' arguments for the financial success of Brexit were based on lies and just complete factual nonsense, based on the idea of a Britain that once had an empire to which it could just literally extract resources from. That isn't the case anymore. But here we are. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button on your way out. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all